apologize for the delay between this video and the last one. I haven't been feeling particularly well this last week, and I haven't had a lot of time to work on this sort of stuff. I know I promised that there wouldn't be any more Battlefield 4 specific content, but this will probably transfer over to the next game. When I lived in southern Arizona, which for those of you European viewers is a state that sits on the southwest corner of the US along the border of Mexico, I would often do my running through arroyos rather than on the roads. Essentially, think of a river that only flows once or twice a year, forming a nice empty bed of sand which would be perfect for running. It's pretty much impossible to actually go cross-country with all the cactus and whatnot, so it's either trail or arroyo. Now, back in the Depression era, some government functionary decided that it would be a good idea to make these rock dams up and down these arroyos. Of course, they're completely pointless, but they were fairly sturdy in their construction, so they've stood years of flash flooding and remain as inexplicable 5-foot-high rock barriers that anyone wishing to move onward has to clamber over. I was running one day in such a place and happened to cross a coyote pup in the arroyo. Ordinarily, it would have simply bounded away from a human, but the steep sidewalls of the arroyo in combination with the rock dam prevented him from going anywhere. So, not having any better ideas, it went up to the dam and stuck its head into one of the gaps between the boulders. It then remained perfectly still, as if hidden. Obviously, if he couldn't see me, I couldn't see him, and the problem was solved. Many players play Battlefield as if they were the coyote pup. In a game where one has no sense of where the character's limbs are, it can be particularly challenging to see the issue with certain peaks. Battlefield is a game about speed. There are several reasons for this. The first is that, unlike Battlefield 3, which had the incredibly accurate heavy-barreled weapons, weapons of Battlefield 4 are not particularly accurate, with most high-rate-of-fire weapons having a 0.2 degree or greater base spread, due to the need to use the compensator instead of the significantly downgraded heavy barrel on weapons with a rate of fire usable in close quarters. On top of this, the maximum spread is pretty negligible in close quarters, making accurate bursts in most engagements a thing of the past. The second issue is one of all games, where player 1's arms are visible to player 2, before player 1 can see and fire at player 2. I'll show a clip from a prior video of mine illustrating this.
I see you here, but not here. No. Ready? Okay.
As you can see, there's a fairly long moment wherein the peeker can't see the other player, but the other player can start shooting the guy peeking. This is obviously somewhat of a problem. There are a few things we can do to address this. The most obvious is to simply peek extremely quickly. This in turn presents its own set of problems, which I'll address later in the video. Despite the weaknesses that peeking first confers, it also has a set of advantages which cannot be ignored. Unlike LAN games, where interactions happen at such a distance that both parties involved see the events more or less as they happen, latency plays a major role in online gaming. The combined latency of two players plays a major role in how a peek is perceived. If the combined latency of both players is on the high side, say at 250, then the peeker is given a massive advantage over the peekee. No, that is not accepted English. Anyway, the engagement can happen and be over before the person being peeked has any time to respond. This can happen if either person has a high ping. On a smaller scale, the problem is still apparent between players with a lower total latency, but it still remains an important part of why the aggressive playstyle, favored by virtually every single successful Battlefield 4 competitive player, is so powerful. I'll first go over some basic peeks from both ends, and discuss why they are somewhat weak if easy to perform.
I just shoot you when I can.
Probably the simplest of all ways to round a corner, strafing while not aiming, and then aiming at the last possible second, allows you to retain some measure of mobility while not requiring a great deal of dexterity. We aim after the corner has been rounded, as doing so beforehand slows strafing significantly, allowing the opponent to get a peek at your elbow and your intentions. We can do the exact same thing as we did before, except crouch as the corner is rounded. This tends to make the player an unexpectedly small target, and will throw off a competent player's aim. Note that crouching in a firefight can be a bad idea if the player you face is not good, as they will often aim at your legs, which can result in an accidental headshot on their part as you crouch into their shots. However, it is good enough against most players that crouching in a fight is still worth doing. As you can see, with both of these basic peeks, I can sustain some damage in return for the damage I deal. This is problematic for all classes except Assault, and even then, it's best to keep as much health as you can for as long as you can. Thus, we need to play to avoid whatever damage is possible. In the name of avoiding damage whenever possible, I will introduce to you 3 useful jump shots that you can apply to your gameplay. Note that all of these require, to some extent, the sprint perk. Even disregarding these sorts of shots, the sprint perk, most easily accessed through the offensive tree, is so good that I think it borderline overpowered. The faster movement opens up all sorts of unwholesome possibilities, including the dreaded snake jumping, and simply makes it easier to move to where the player counts, on objectives. If you're still running defensive, you might consider switching over. Mechanic is only useful if you plan on sitting in a vehicle all game, and I guess there are some other options, but if you're not sprinting fast, you're not playing Battlefield the way you're supposed to. Note that you will have to practice your target acquisition in order to use any of these effectively. The advantage gained from fast peeking is lost if you can't actually hit your target. While all of these appear very quick, they will, if performed correctly, grant perfect ADS stationary accuracy, or at least something close to it. Before I start, note that there's a huge weakness to jump shots. While it confers a great advantage in some situations, use it incorrectly and you will hurt your gameplay more than help it. The problem is that you can't shoot while jumping. If you miscalculate the leap, you'll be completely unable to return fire. Instead of doing a lame peek, you can simply jump as you approach a corner. It's a whole lot easier to do with the sprint perk, since the extra speed boost makes you fly farther when you jump from a sprint. The procedure is pretty simple. Simply approach a corner that you wish to peek, jump when you're about 2 meters from the edge, and fly around the corner. As you clear the corner, make sure you are close to hitting the ground, or have already hit it. It's imperative that you time your jump such that you're no longer in the air by the time you're in the open, as you cannot shoot while you're in the air. This technique actually relies more on map knowledge than actual reflexes. Since the jump is so fast, you need to aim for where you predict enemies to be, not where you actually see them. You need to start firing on the opponent before you even realize that the opponent is there. It sounds hard, but it's actually quite easy. If there's simply a possibility of an opponent being in a certain location, fire anyway. There are certain spots that many people play, so once you've played the maps for a while, you should learn what they are. This way, you can bypass the rather lame human reaction time and finish a kill before you could consciously recognize the threat. When you're in the air, try holding the crouch button.
$35, no way.
I don't mean the toggle crouch button, I mean the hold to crouch button. By default it is control, but I've rebound it to the C key to make it a bit more accessible with the thumb. You can do the same thing as you would in a normal jump, except press and hold the crouch button at the apex. Provided that you land right as you clear the corner, your character will do a stupid little slide and will show in the crouching position, but still move at full speed. It's very effective when done correctly. The Zuzu jump makes a crouch jump look fair and wholesome.
Just kill me as you come around. And I had
and that's saying something because the crouching jump shot results in a character that is just about impossible to hit. It was supposed to have been fixed in a prior patch. It was, in fact, not. We thought it was, but in our testing confirmed that it still works quite well. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the jump, I will link a video by Rayla explaining it in the description. It's complex enough that it warrants a separate video, but I'll give you a brief tutorial here. You have to approach the corner in a similar manner to a normal jump shot. However, there's a restriction. When you reach the apex of the jump, hold down your aim button, probably the right mouse button, rotate toward the direction you wish to shoot, and press no keys. You should already be on the downslope of your jump by the time you round the corner. If the opponent sees anything before then, the jump will not work as intended. If it worked just as a normal jump shot, it wouldn't be worth performing. However, though nothing interesting happens on my screen, you can see something very strange happening on the opponent's screen. I appear to be prone, though I am not. If the very small target profile presented by a semi-prone figure wasn't enough, hitboxes are also somewhat buggy while in this state, and it is difficult to return fire. Additionally, if the jump is performed so as the landing is obscured by half cover, the shooter's body can be completely obscured from the target's perspective, yet still hit and kill the target. I hope you've learned something interesting from this video, and I hope to see you out there, making cornering a bit more interesting.